coming off of me. My shoe was melting.
兩位小仔仔殺啊！哎呦呦呦呦呦！我操！
The roads. Literally.
The extreme heat wave that gripped Europe for days ultimately triggered one of the most severe combined weather disasters the continent has faced in recent memory. Around the end of June and into early July, a powerful storm system swept across the continent, bringing destructive winds, large hail, and widespread flooding in its wake. National meteorological agencies across most affected countries issued their highest-level red alerts, the classification typically reserved for weather events posing direct danger to life and critical infrastructure. The underlying cause was a massive heat buildup driven by what meteorologists call a heat dome, a large area of high-pressure air that essentially traps hot air beneath it like a lid, preventing it from dispersing and allowing temperatures to climb day after day. In Palois, France, shaded air temperatures reached a staggering 43.8 degrees Celsius, a level that pushed the country's energy infrastructure to its limits. Officials were forced to reduce output at major nuclear power stations along the Garonne and Rhône rivers, since these plants rely on river water for reactor cooling, and the water itself had become too warm to safely absorb waste heat without violating environmental discharge regulations or risking equipment damage. Comparable infrastructure failures emerged in the United Kingdom, where rail lines in southern England and London physically warped as steel expanded under the extreme heat, forcing speed restrictions and delays across the network. Roads buckled, and in some areas traffic signals softened or melted outright. In Berlin, emergency crews deployed water cannons for a dual purpose: cooling overheated asphalt to prevent it from deforming, and spraying residents struggling to cope with the oppressive conditions. According to the World Health Organization, the heat wave drove a sharp spike in heat-related mortality, with confirmed fatalities in Spain and France alone surpassing 1,300, a toll reflecting how dangerous prolonged extreme heat can be, particularly for elderly populations and those without access to adequate cooling. By early July, conditions shifted with striking speed. When the superheated, moisture-starved air mass finally collided with an incoming cold front sweeping in from the Atlantic, the result was an explosive release of stored atmospheric energy. In meteorological terms, this kind of collision between two dramatically different air masses is a classic recipe for severe convective storms. The greater the temperature contrast, the more violent the resulting weather. This one unleashed a chain of destructive supercell storms, damaging hailstorms, and flash floods across large swaths of the continent. To understand just how intense the subsequent storms became, it helps to trace exactly how the underlying heat had built up geographically in the weeks prior. The heat dome initially settled over Western and Southern Europe, with Spain absorbing the brunt of the damage. According to data from the European Forest Fire Information System, EFIS, the country lost approximately 50,000 hectares of forest to wildfires, an area comparable to a mid-sized city. In the provinces of Huesca, Córdoba, and Huelva, fires advanced dangerously close to populated areas, prompting regional governments to declare states of emergency and deploy units of the Military Emergency Service, Spain's specialized rapid response firefighting corps normally reserved for the most severe blazes. Temperatures climbing to 45 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit completely dehydrated topsoil and vegetation, creating near-perfect conditions for spontaneous combustion. Dry brush and grassland can ignite from little more than a spark, discarded cigarette, or even friction once moisture content drops low enough. Simultaneously, the United Kingdom experienced its own abnormal heat surge, with temperatures in the southern counties and London exceeding 37 degrees Celsius, 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the UK's buildings, transport systems, and power grids are engineered for a historically temperate climate rather than sustained extreme heat, Even this comparatively moderate reading by Southern European standards translated into a full-blown national infrastructure crisis. The prolonged dry spell sparked large wildfires across northern England, most notably on peatland near Glossop in Derbyshire, a type of terrain particularly vulnerable to fire because dried peat can smolder underground for extended periods, making these fires notoriously difficult to fully extinguish. As the heat dome expanded eastward, it struck the Balkan Peninsula with similar intensity. Along Croatia's Adriatic coast, the wildfire crisis was worsened by dry lightning storms, thunderstorms that produce lightning strikes without accompanying rainfall, a phenomenon that frequently ignites vegetation fires without any moisture to help suppress them. On the islands of Siovo, near the coastal city of Split, and Vis, fires raced through parched Mediterranean woodland at speeds reaching several kilometers per hour, propelled by strong coastal winds and directly threatening residential neighborhoods. Firefighting aircraft squadrons were urgently scrambled to douse the flames from the air, a critical resource in terrain too steep or remote for ground crews to access quickly. Southern Europe's atmosphere had effectively become, in the words used to describe it, a vast simmering cauldron of trapped heat. By the start of the following week, this extreme heat had migrated into Central and Eastern Europe. Red-level alerts were subsequently declared by national weather services in Poland, Hungary, Romania, Croatia, Serbia, Slovakia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, with the same warning level persisting in Switzerland. Dozens of national and regional temperature records were broken outright. The anticyclone responsible had, in effect, trapped scorching air originating from the Sahara Desert at ground level, converting the entirety of Central and Eastern Europe into what amounted to a continental-scale heat reservoir, storing up enormous amounts of thermal energy with nowhere to go. Once the atmosphere had accumulated a critical mass of this stored energy, its first violent release occurred in France, which became the initial impact zone when the cold front arrived. In the north and southwest of the country, supercell thunderstorms, the most organized and dangerous form of convective storm, capable of producing extended rotation and severe hail, generated gale-force winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour along with intense, damaging hail. The Coronos Meteorological Observatory, a French institute specializing in severe weather tracking, recorded more than 13,000 individual lightning strikes within just a few hours, illustrating the sheer scale of electrical activity generated by the collision of air masses. Hailstones up to 3 centimeters in diameter caused extensive damage across the Oise department, shattering car windshields and puncturing roofing material. The storm system then advanced into Germany, where in Bavaria, sudden microbursts and torrential rain paralyzed operations at Munich International Airport, forcing air traffic controllers to cancel more than 100 flights and strand thousands of passengers. Around the same time, meteorologists recorded a large waterspout, a tornado-like vortex that forms over water, over Lake Constance, an occurrence considered rare at these latitudes and typically associated more with tropical or subtropical waters. In the Czech Republic, where record-breaking temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius 104 degrees Fahrenheit had been recorded just beforehand, the abrupt temperature drop arrived alongside squalls and hail that damaged regional power lines, cutting electricity to numerous communities. The single heaviest bout of precipitation, however, struck northern Italy, particularly the regions of Lombardy and Veneto. Tennis ball-sized hailstones, among the largest recorded during the entire event, devastated agricultural land across low-lying farming areas, destroying crops just weeks or months from harvest. Meanwhile, a so-called cloudburst, an extremely intense, localized downpour capable of dropping enormous rainfall totals in a matter of minutes, struck near Naples and transformed city streets into fast-flowing rivers almost instantly, catching residents and drivers off guard. The storm front continued its relentless push eastward, crossing through the still sweltering Balkans and Central Europe. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as in Romania, both already operating under red alert. The storms toppled hundreds of trees and triggered localized flooding. Romania in particular saw an entire month's average rainfall fall within a single day, with hurricane-force gusts tearing down billboards and ripping roofing material off residential buildings. In Slovakia and Poland, the dramatic weather reversal occurred almost immediately after local temperatures had peaked at 41 degrees Celsius, illustrating just how quickly the atmosphere flipped from one extreme to the other. Wind gusts exceeding 25 meters per second, equivalent to roughly 90 kilometers per hour, tore down high-voltage power lines in these countries, leaving large towns without electricity for extended periods. Soil that had been baked hard and dry by weeks of extreme heat was physically unable to absorb the sudden deluge of rainfall, a phenomenon that dramatically accelerates flash flooding since water runs off compacted, water-repellent ground rather than soaking in. This triggered rapid flash floods along smaller rivers and streams that are normally far less prone to overflowing. In Bulgaria, wind speeds reached 90 kilometers per hour in the southeastern regions of Karnobat and Yambol, with resulting torrents of water bringing regional highway traffic to a complete standstill. Hungary experienced similarly destructive conditions, with powerful gusts in Budapest wrecking commercial structures and flipping trailers and outdoor structures with ease. Across the entire affected region, the enormous thermal energy stored up during the preceding heat wave transformed what might otherwise have been routine seasonal thunderstorms into a coordinated series of destructive, near-simultaneous disasters spanning thousands of kilometers. As of July 3rd, precipitation intensity has decreased and temperatures have temporarily stabilized across most of the affected countries, offering a brief respite to exhausted emergency services and residents alike. European climatologists caution, however, that celebrating an end to the crisis would be premature. This lull represents nothing more than a brief synoptic pause rather than a genuine resolution, and a new area of high pressure is already forming over the Atlantic Ocean. Forecasters warn that in the coming days, this developing anticyclone is likely to generate a second heat dome, once again trapping scorching air over the continent and restarting the entire destructive cycle. Extreme heat, wildfires, and the violent storms that inevitably follow when that heat finally breaks. Many climate scientists now view this pattern not as an isolated anomaly but as evidence of a longer-term climatic shift, one in which such extreme, compound weather events, intense heat followed rapidly by violent storms, are transitioning from rare occurrences into a recurring feature of the European climate. If you found this coverage valuable, consider subscribing to Storm Strike for ongoing in-depth analysis of major weather events and natural disasters as they unfold. Hit the like button to support this kind of detailed reporting, and turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon so you don't miss future updates as this situation continues to develop. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Share your thoughts on this event, your own experiences with the recent heat wave or storms if you were affected, or topics you'd like us to cover in future videos. Your engagement genuinely helps this channel grow and allows us to keep bringing you thorough, well-researched coverage of the stories that matter. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there.